Hello, I'm Laura, a woman in my 30s. I've been through divorce and have no children. The reason for my divorce was how my ex-husband dealt with his sister-in-law's family. I'm sharing my story here to express my frustrations and to keep striving towards my dreams. When the issue first arose, my husband and I had been married for a year and a half. We had chosen not to have children. Why? Because I had dreams to pursue, and that required effort and saving money. I thought there'd be time for kids after achieving my dreams. My husband, his father, and his mother all understood and supported me. I grew up in a close-knit family with parents, a sister, and a brother. We always chat and have fun together. On the other hand, my husband's family kept to themselves and didn't interfere much in each other's lives. In fact, we'd only hear from his parents once every 2 months or so for a quick update. When we were dating, he respected my dreams and liked that I was family-oriented. Since his family seemed hands-off, I thought we'd manage well after marriage. But after we got married, my husband began inviting his sister and her kids over constantly. And then one day, my husband David said this: "My sister has 3 boys, and it's tough for her. Help her out. Pick up the kids from preschool, make meals, and even give more gifts." Now, if his sister, a housewife, was busy, I could have understood. But her kids were a handful, and I simply didn't have the time since I also work. When I refused, my husband got angry out of nowhere. "You pick up and feed your own sister's kids, don't you? They're both adorable nieces and nephews. Don't be discriminatory." It's true, I did pick up my niece. My sister was hospitalized for a few days because she fell ill at work while pregnant with her second child. My sister's husband couldn't make it to work, so I stepped in. During that time, my mother visited my sister and cleaned the house, while I picked up my niece from preschool and fed her until my brother-in-law could take over. He often came home exhausted, so I'd prepare simple meals, but that was an emergency because my sister was unwell. However, my husband just couldn't grasp this. Honestly, I wasn't keen on my sister-in-law's kids, but I've never treated them differently from my niece during birthdays or Christmas. "You took care of your niece, but you won't take care of your nephew?" Taking care of my niece was different. She's my relative. Maybe you should handle your own sister's kid, especially since you're the one who wants to take this on. "But I work late. Picking up the kid from preschool is out of the question, and let's not even talk about my cooking skills." Having my sister-in-law's kids over was always a handful. My husband couldn't manage them all on his own. It was just too much. They'd run around, grab handfuls of cake, and fights would break out in a snap. Whenever I cooked, they'd complain it was gross and uneatable. Initially, we'd consult with my sister-in-law and her husband about gifts for the kids, buying them secretly. But at one point, she just asked for cash instead. Assuming she had her reasons, we went along, setting a certain amount to give her each time. Turns out, she was pocketing the money, and the kids started calling us stingy. I felt it was bold of her to take the money and still ask for more gifts. I didn't like these kids, who were neither polite nor careful with our things. And the fact that I was expected to be the primary caregiver was frustrating. You offered to help on your own, so you should take care of it alone. If you were helping with my niece, I would have helped with my nephew. But you never did, right? If you can't handle it, you shouldn't offer. And at the very least, you should consult me. Why are you so against taking care of them? Well, your nephew is a lot more destructive, okay? I don't want any more of my things ruined. It's different when it's a single niece versus 3 siblings close in age. Our discussion was going nowhere. We needed to cool off, and for my husband to understand my point of view. I packed up and went back to my parents' home. Divorce wasn't on my mind at that point. I was hoping for reconciliation if he could understand where I was coming from. Maybe it's wrong to favor my own blood-related niece, but back when my sister was pregnant with her, I was still single and living at home. She would come by and I'd get to feel her growing belly. I was genuinely happy for her, and I felt different about my nephew. Still, blood shouldn't be the only factor. I tried to treat them equally, but I could no longer tolerate my sister-in-law's audacity and my nephew's demanding nature. When I left, I sent an email suggesting we both take some time to cool off. But it seemed like my husband wasn't fully grasping the situation. Why are you making such a big deal out of this? My sister-in-law is not ill or anything, so why do I have to take over her responsibilities? I was not fond of my husband's attitude of assuming I'd naturally take over. I didn't reply to the email, but just kept a record of it. I visited my parents' house after a long time and went out for a meal with my parents and my college-aged brother, Daniel. I told them about what had happened and said I might get a divorce. They were understanding. Divorce doesn't affect your dreams, and experiencing it once might not be a bad thing. Why don't you stay here for a while and focus on your goals? I don't appreciate the entitlement from him, so why not divorce? Taking my father's advice, I decided to focus on achieving my dreams while staying at my parents' house. A few days later, another email came from my husband. If you don't come home, your precious music box might get destroyed when my sisters visit tomorrow. I had already taken all the stuff I bought myself, as well as gifts from parents, friends, and siblings. He didn't seem to realize that. The only thing left at home is what you gave me. After I replied, he seemed to get anxious and called me for the first time since I left. Your brother came over unannounced, played games when I wasn't home. He wanted me to admit I was wrong and come back. I explained that my brother came because he had free time, and he helped me with the game. It just so happened to be a day my husband was at work. I had paid for the gaming console, and the games were mine too. I hadn't inconvenienced him in any way. I won't return with that attitude. I'm doing just fine, and I don't want to meet your sisters or nephews because I don't like them. With those final words, I hung up the phone on my husband. I consulted my mother-in-law because my husband showed no remorse, only to learn that he and his sister weren't close in the past. Given that she got pregnant and married as a teen, leaving home early, it's kind of expected they didn't get along. Even my mother-in-law had no idea why they'd suddenly become close now. I had all my treasured music boxes with me, and I didn't care about the stuff my husband had given me. Ignoring his emails led to a photo of my broken music box arriving that night. I have all my important things with me. I'm not attached to anything you gave me, I replied. Days passed with no further development. My in-laws grew concerned with our silence and called my emergency cell phone. I explained that I was at my parents' home and told them why. Hearing that my parents-in-law was considering divorce, they made an emergency visit to my parents' house for a discussion. The talk involved parents-in-law, my husband and I, and my parents. It seemed that my husband had been staying over at sister-in-law's house instead of coming home. Sister-in-law, who doesn't do housework or childcare, seemed to find David bothersome and told him to call me and go home. My husband wanted to play the role of a dependable brother to his sister, but instead he felt discouraged by being treated as an annoyance. He told me it was unfair that I live close to my parents' house and get along with my siblings. Seeing you close with your family was painful for me, so I tried to be close with my sister. Even if it makes you uncomfortable, I've been uncomfortable too. Isn't that fair? You get along with your family, and that's not fair. So it's not fair unless my sister also gets treated better. Usually, in-laws on the husband's side get priority, right? But your family doesn't care about me. Your sister's husband is treated well, though. Everyone, including parents-in-law, was taken aback by my husband's logic. I sighed deeply, feeling utterly dismayed. It was clear that any remaining emotional connection I had with him had vanished. Being part of your happy sibling charade is exhausting. You say don't discriminate between nieces and nephews, but I've been trying to treat both the same. But being told not to favor one over the other is unrealistic. I'm human. I have likes and dislikes. To be honest, why should I love a child who's not even blood-related and is ill-behaved? They break things, make a mess, are picky eaters, and constantly complain. And your sister only dictates what to feed them without bringing anything they can eat. There's no gratitude for taking care of them. And, like I've told you multiple times, the reason we took care of my sister's husband and niece was that it was an emergency situation. My sister was hospitalized. Your sister is a housewife and perfectly healthy, right? If it's so hard with 3 kids, maybe don't have so many in the first place. The concept that a wife should silently obey her husband and do all the housework is outdated. If you want to say such things, why don't you earn a double income like husbands from a generation ago? We never favored your sister's husband over you. We didn't bully you. Dad even invited you for drinks and to share hobbies, right? You're the one who declined. What does being cherished mean to you? There's a reason we treat you and your sister's husband differently. You know that. We've known him longer, and he was already like family before they got married. Remember I told you about when Dad got sick while I was in college? Your sister's husband was the one who stepped up and supported him. You never have a drink with Dad as an adult. You don't put any effort into family gatherings, always running away. It's okay if you're not comfortable with it. Running away is an option, but don't hold grudges for avoiding things you don't want to do. Is that what being cherished means to you? Is it that you have to be number one in everything? How old are you? It's unbecoming for an adult. Wanting a family that only serves your interests is unrealistic. You're just a child trying to create a world that's convenient for you under the pretense of equality. Also, about that music box, I can't trust someone who uses things to make threats. I don't have the confidence that we can continue as a married couple, so let's part ways. That's when my husband finally realized I was serious about divorce and started making bizarre threats. I looked down on him coldly, thinking that he might still have a chance if he apologized and admitted his mistakes. If you leave me, you'll be unhappy. I have a feeling. I'd rather not spend a lifetime with your feelings. I'd be happier without you. A married couple is one unit. Can you manage if you break off and become half a person? There would be no problem. I'd just go back to how I was before marrying you. We were always two separate individuals. The idea that a couple is one unit only holds when both are helping each other. I can live without your help, and I'd be emotionally and physically better off without you. Are you jealous of my sister? You guys left me alone much more. Hearing that, I burst into laughter. Jealous? Do you think I have that much emotional investment in you? As long as you don't bother me, I don't care what you and your sister do. If you two get along without relying on me, I won't mind. But if you ask me to take care of your nephew or cook, that's a different story. I'm willing to help if your sister is sick, but she's healthy, isn't she? Why should I do what she used to do as a matter of course? If you're going to treat me like a maid, shouldn't there be a salary involved? Isn't it presumptuous to expect me to work without any compensation? I do housework for you because you bring home a salary. I took care of my sister's husband and niece because my sister was in the hospital. Your sister isn't sick or financially dependent on you. If you want to be a reliable brother to her, then take action yourself. Don't involve me in your little facade. It seemed like my husband had been harboring feelings of inferiority towards me and my family for quite some time. He felt that since I made him feel inferior, I deserved to suffer or feel bad, as if that was only fair. I continually rejected that mindset. As a result, I secured my husband's agreement for divorce. You don't value my family, and you don't listen to me. I don't need a wife like that. Take all the savings. Take whatever you want. He signed the divorce papers, and we were officially separated. But that wasn't the end of it. My sister safely gave birth to her second child, a baby boy. As I was busy preparing to live alone, my ex-husband unexpectedly showed up at my family's home. Out of nowhere, he blurted, "I have a favor to ask. I tried inviting my sister over because I felt lonely, but she refused because I can't cook. So I've been ordering delivery, but I'm running out of money. We used to split living expenses, but now I have to cover everything myself, and I can't make ends meet. If I stop ordering food, my sister won't come over anymore. So can you help me out financially each month? We could get back together, you know." When he showed up asking for money instead of apologizing, I couldn't help but burst into laughter. What's the advantage for me to get back with you? I actually have more spending money now. I don't want to see your face ever again. If you show up again, I'm calling my lawyer. I had my dad and brother, who had come out just in time, send him away. Although he hasn't visited since, he still sends emails regularly. The more I read his incessant demands for money, the more I realize how poor my judgment of character was. I've been ignoring his emails, and eventually they stopped coming. Rumor has it he's drowning in debt and has gone on the run. I can't say for sure if that's true, but it seems he's definitely struggling financially. I have no lingering feelings for him, so as long as it doesn't ruin my peace of mind, that's fine by me. Right now, I'm living fulfilling days, playing with my family and chasing my dreams while working. Seeing my sister and her husband, it's clear that marriage can bring happiness, but I think there's also value in pursuing happiness that isn't tied to marriage. I might meet someone and remarry someday, or I might continue to chase my dreams and spend my days with my family. Either way, I want to live my life my way, seeking the kind of happiness that suits me, instead of conforming to society's general definition of happiness.
I want chocolate cake now. Go buy it for me. Lying in bed, feeling terrible, my crazy mother-in-law, Grace, demanded that I get her a cake right away. I finally lost it with this woman, who was making a racket above my head. Would you just shut up? Listen, I've got a month left to live. Go get your own damn cake, you idiot. My name is Olivia, and I'm 28 years old. I met my husband David through a friend, and we got married after dating for 3 years. We don't have any kids yet, but we're enjoying our time together. David's family owns a small factory. with about 30 employees. They're doing pretty well in their area. The company was founded by my late father-in-law, and I heard from David that it grew with the combined efforts of the employees. Now David's sister Sophia is running the company as the CEO. By the way, she's not married. Sophia has a knack for business, and the company's performance has improved recently. Must be Sophia's great communication skills, just like Mom, David said. Sophia was indeed friendly and approachable, even to me when we first met. I'm Sophia, your sister-in-law. I'm so happy to have such a cute sister. She grabbed my hand and said this with a wonderful smile. As someone who only has brothers, I was also happy to feel like I had gained a sister. So far, it sounds like I have nothing to complain about, but that's not the case. The problem is my mother-in-law. Our company has coffee breaks at 10 a.m. and 3 p.m., and I really hate those times. And here's why. Sorry, Olivia. I'm a bit tied up. Could you get Mom's coffee? When I hear that, my mood instantly drops. The family home is next to the factory, and my mother-in-law chose to retire and stay home after my father-in-law passed away. However, she seemed to cherish this coffee break, saying, I've been waiting for you. So, Olivia, I wanted to talk to Sophia. She gave me a blatantly disappointed look. Naturally, she wasn't in a good mood, and as she was about to leave with a wry smile, she said, Hey, I have something to say to you, so sit here. And then she complains to me until the break is over. So, you've been married for 3 years and still no kids. What can I do? Having kids isn't something you can control. And if I stay quiet, she gets even more irritated. Why such a gloomy face? I wonder why David chose someone like you. Plus, given your parents, who knows how long you'll live? The sooner the better. She said that with a sigh. Hearing her say that, especially about my parents, really gets me down. And there's a reason for that. When David and I decided to get married and went to meet his family, this happened. What? You don't have parents? My mother-in-law looked shocked when I told her. Of course, it's not like I never had parents. My mom passed away from cancer when I was 10, and my dad died of a heart attack 10 years later when I was 20. My memories of my mom are vague, but my dad raised my brother and me, all by himself. I deeply regret that he passed away before I could repay his kindness. When people hear about my situation, they usually look at me with pity and say, You must have had a hard time. But my mother-in-law was different. So, you might not live long either, huh? She actually said that. While I was stunned by her response, What a rude thing to say. How insensitive. My husband David said. Despite that, my mother-in-law kept grumbling, insisting it was an important issue. Should I reconsider this marriage? Just as I was thinking that, Sophia, who had been quiet until then, slammed her hand on the table and said, What are you talking about? Said so quietly, everyone in the room froze. Then my mother-in-law said, Right, Sophia, you agree with me, don't you? That's what she said. Sophia coldly responded, What? I told Mom. David chose Olivia himself, and she's wonderful. Why can't you support that? That's what she told my mother-in-law, with cold eyes. This seemed to shock my mother-in-law, who adores her daughter. From then on, she stopped making snide comments, except when we were alone. Even during the twice-daily coffee breaks, she looked disappointed when I brought her coffee instead of Sophia. David and I rented a room near his family home, so the only time I had to endure her complaints was during those 10-minute coffee breaks. I'm so glad we don't live together. But my peace was suddenly shattered. That year, a record-breaking hurricane brought a lot of misfortune my way. Olivia, hurry! Something terrible has happened. I'd never heard David sound so panicked. I rushed to the living room to find it in complete disarray. What is this? Our ceiling was leaking terribly due to the hurricane. It wasn't just our room. The owner contacted us to say it was the same in other rooms. It seemed impossible to repair while living there, so we had to find temporary housing. Sophia cheerfully suggested, "Why are you worrying? Just live with us. Your commute will be 30 seconds. Sophia said that with an innocent look on her face. So, we ended up staying with David's family for a while. "Welcome home, David. The leak must have been tough, but Mom is happy we can live together again." My mother-in-law greeted us cheerfully, but David mostly ignored her, like a teenager in a rebellious phase. And finally she said, "Oh, Olivia, you're here too. I didn't notice because you're so quiet. Smile more." Frustrated, my husband made a face, and all I could do was force a smile, knowing we'd be staying there for a while. After moving in together, I witnessed something quite peculiar. The first time I saw it was during dinner on our first night living together. Wanting to show my gratitude, I cooked dinner: bread, soup, and steak. It wasn't a glamorous menu, but my mother-in-law and sister-in-law said it was delicious and ate it all. I remember feeling genuinely relieved. After a while, my mother-in-law suddenly got up and brought a container from the fridge. Humming a tune, she opened it and piled a ton of its contents onto her steak. "Ugh, Mom, you're still eating that stuff?" My husband sitting next to me looked disgusted. Sophia, my sister-in-law, rolled her eyes and said, "She won't stop, no matter how many times I tell her. I've given up." She then burst into laughter. At first, I couldn't tell what was on top of the steak. Upon closer inspection, I realized it was jam. While sweet sauces on meat aren't unheard of, adding jam to a seasoned steak was just bizarre. "When you eat something salty, you crave something sweet, right? That's why," she said, looking quite pleased with herself. Honestly, it gave me heartburn just watching her. For the record, I'm not a fan of sweet sauces on meat. "Come on, Olivia, why don't you try it? It's delicious," Mother-in-law said, turning to me for the first time. I didn't want to eat it either, but I forced a smile. Apparently, that wasn't the reaction she was hoping for. "I'm recommending it for a reason. You might live longer if you follow my example." With that parting shot, she retreated to her room. I was left speechless as she stormed off. My husband and sister-in-law apologized, saying, "Sorry." "Sorry. Mom's at it again with her nonsense." Apparently, mother-in-law has a serious sweet tooth and doesn't feel her day is complete without eating a cake. Amazingly, her annual health checkups always come back normal. Come to think of it, she's always eating cake during our 3 p.m. coffee breaks. I remember that. I like cake too, but not every day. It would get monotonous. And what about blood sugar levels? I've always been cautious about my health, especially since both my parents had short lifespans. So mother-in-law's jam steak was quite a shock. "Wait, does Sophia buy the cake every day?" Caught off guard, Sophia admitted. "Yeah, she makes me go buy it. She says it's embarrassing for her to do it herself. Thanks to that, I've become good friends with all the local cake shops." Sophia said, laughing. Watching this, my husband David said, "Sophia, this isn't a laughing matter. Mom's getting older. She needs to start caring about her health." I've always left it to Sophia to deal with Mom, and I feel bad about it. With that, my husband continued to look exasperated. "Well, I think you guys will have to help out more from now on," Sophia said with a cheerful face, and I braced myself for more interactions with mother-in-law. Living with my in-laws made my commute much shorter, so I took the initiative to do household chores before and after work. I tried to engage my mother-in-law in conversation, but she often gave me the cold shoulder or outright ignored me. Despite that, she never missed an opportunity to complain about the kids during our coffee breaks. Since moving here, I've had more bad days. Must be the stress. My spirits were low. My husband noticed and offered multiple times to go to the doctor with me. Let's move out and stay at a hotel temporarily, he suggested, but I declined because it felt like a waste of money and the nearest hotel was still a bit far. Then, the worst thing happened. A business trip for a whole week? I was speechless at the news from my husband. The reason for my despair? Sophia, my sister-in-law, would be going too, meaning I'd be alone with mother-in-law. Yes, I'm saying that. My husband offered to take me with him, but I thought it's just a week. I hope I can handle it, especially since I still wasn't feeling well. On the day they left, Sophia sent me a mother-in-law survival guide to my phone. If anything happens, just feed her cake and you'll be fine. I couldn't help but laugh. The list included local cake shops and mother-in-law's favorite cakes from each. For someone like me, who was bracing for a tough week, this info was a godsend. In a week, our home renovations would be done, and we could move back. I thought I could manage, but that optimism crumbled on the first night. When I returned from work, mother-in-law was blocking the entrance. You know why I'm angry, don't you? No, I don't. I'm not psychic. Losing patience, mother-in-law snapped. You missed both the 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. coffee breaks today. Her words caught me off guard. Indeed, with my husband and Sophia away and end-of-month tasks piling up, I'd completely forgotten about mother-in-law's coffee breaks, and I myself never had a coffee break. I thought she'd understand since she used to work, but she yelled, The moment we're alone, you start this harassment? You wicked woman! She said that with an angry look on her face. I felt a huge disconnect with her. Why am I getting yelled at like this? Do I deserve to be called wicked? Suppressing my anger, I thought, it's just a few more days, and said, I did buy cake during my lunch break. It's in the office fridge. Sorry I didn't bring it. Here you go. Her face instantly changed from angry to smiling. Let's forget about today. Don't forget tomorrow, okay? She said and cheerfully went back to her room. I'll just call her the cake demon from now on. From then on, I never forgot the coffee breaks, knowing how troublesome it would be to upset mother-in-law. On the day my husband and Sophia were due back, I felt so stressed that I was hit with nausea, headaches, and a loss of appetite. I took the day off and went to the hospital. It's pretty bad. Can your family come right away? I couldn't stop crying at the doctor's words. I was told I have cancer, and at most 6 months, maybe even just 1 month to live. I returned home, my face tear-streaked and my body shaky, and lay down on the bed. The door burst open. What are you doing skipping work? Sophia and David are working hard and you're slacking off? Her screeching worsened my headache. I didn't have the energy to respond, so I just said, I'm not feeling well, and closed my eyes. Mother-in-law didn't seem to like it either. She didn't want to leave the room and still complained to me. She continued to complain, saying things like, That's why you can't have kids. And, Who knows if you'll live long? I just kept silent, pretending to sleep. I pretended to be asleep. Then, out of nowhere, she asked about today's coffee break. Is she really this stupid? I thought, opening my eyes to see her standing over me. Grace, I'm sorry. I'm not feeling well enough to go shopping today. Could you please? She cut me off. I don't care. I want chocolate cake now. Go buy it. You're probably faking it. She screamed at me louder than ever. My frustration exploded at the woman in front of me, who was selfish like a child. Shut up. Listen to me. I have 1 month to live. Go buy your own damn cake, you idiot. What? My words seemed to stun my mother-in-law, who looked at me with wide eyes. Then, from behind mother-in-law, Mom, what are you doing? And Olivia, What do you mean by 1 more month? My husband, with a pale face, and my sister-in-law, who looked equally concerned, were standing there. Weren't you coming back tomorrow? Ignoring the visibly shaken mother-in-law, my husband came to my side. I felt so relieved by his actions that I burst into tears. I can't take it anymore. The doctor says it might be cancer, and I'm not feeling well, but you keep nagging me to go buy cake. Enough is enough. Stop bothering me about the kids, too. Just leave me alone, you idiot. I let out all my resentment towards mother-in-law while crying. My husband and sister-in-law looked at mother-in-law with cold eyes. Sending a sick person to buy cake? Are you stupid? Sophia, who's usually all smiles, had a face I'd never seen before. A terrifying one. You've been making snide remarks about the kids. Look, I didn't say anything because it's a private matter, but the reason we can't have kids is me. My husband raised his voice as he said this. In reality, about a year after we got married, we consulted a doctor because we were having trouble conceiving. The test showed that I was fine, but my husband's numbers were low. He felt really down about it and kept apologizing to me with a sad face. I didn't want to make him feel that way, so I avoided talking about kids as much as possible. I did want children, but I thought life with just my husband was enough. I never considered leaving him because we couldn't have kids. I didn't tell mother-in-law because I knew she'd start nagging my husband next. I didn't want that. Mother-in-law listened to my husband's words with a face like her soul had been sucked out. Just then, my cell phone rang. The caller ID showed. It was the hospital. Hello? Yes? Right now? My husband just got home. Okay, understood. The doctor who had called earlier sounded very urgent, asking us to come right away. Am I really that sick? As I started to cry from the anxiety. It's okay, Olivia. Can you stand? I'm with you. My husband, who also looked like he was about to cry, and I rushed to the hospital. As we were leaving, I caught a glimpse of mother-in-law get a stern lecture from Sophia. When we arrived at the hospital, we were immediately ushered into a room where the doctor and even the hospital director were waiting to offer us a deep apology. A misdiagnosis? According to the doctor, they had mixed up my medical records with another patient who had the same name and birth date as me. I couldn't believe such a thing could happen, but the doctor did look extremely worn out. This incident was later covered in a local news segment, and the hospital vowed to review its working conditions. I'm not a specialist, but Olivia's symptoms might be. We were then referred to another hospital. When we returned to my in-law's house, mother-in-law seemed to have been scolded by Sophia and was shrinking in her seat. Sophia later told me she was worried that her newlywed son might lose his wife and be heartbroken. It might be love turned inside out, but it was a real hassle. Seeing our tear-streaked faces, even mother-in-law broke down. Did I really do something that bad? She started crying. So what about Olivia? Sophia asked with a concerned look. I'm pregnant, I said, tears of joy filling my eyes. My husband was also shedding tears of happiness beside me. We immediately went to the maternity hospital as advised. It's still early, but yes, you're pregnant. We can confirm the heartbeat. Hearing that, we both burst into tears, even though we were in a hospital. Sophia also cried, saying, I'm so glad, so very glad. As for what happened next, Sophia got engaged to her long-term boyfriend and moved to another state with him after quitting her job. We had heard about this before, so it wasn't a surprise. My husband, who was taking over as the new CEO, seemed to have his hands full with client visits. The business trip, by the way, was for that reason. He told me later that he was able to come home a day early because it ended sooner than expected. Mother-in-law seemed to know nothing about it. What? Getting married? Quitting her job and moving to another state? And was shocked. Sophia told her, Yeah, I told you, remember? Well, it doesn't matter. It's settled. Mother-in-law was in a daze, and we all laughed. We returned home to find our leaky roof repaired and our room looking brand new. We cheered in delight. Things remained awkward with mother-in-law. My husband was angrier than I was and said he never wanted to see her again. But mother-in-law started showing up occasionally during our coffee breaks, holding not cake, but small snacks like biscuits. She had stopped the daily cakes and jam steaks, apparently trying to be more health conscious now that she knew a grandchild was on the way. Employees who had worked there since my father-in-law was CEO seemed happy to see mother-in-law, so I realized she wasn't inherently a bad person. Our conversations gradually increased, and she stopped complaining. When our daughter Emma was born, mother-in-law transformed. She started doing things like buying diapers and leaving side dishes for dinner, saying, "Feel free to eat. You're always working so hard." Even when she knew I was home, she'd send a message and leave without ringing the doorbell. The side dishes were in a cooler, and I appreciated her thoughtfulness. I felt I could get along with this version of mother-in-law. What really convinced me was when Emma was born. Mother-in-law took my hand and said, "Thank you, Olivia. Really, thank you." Seeing her tears, I knew she was sincere. Sophia also seems to be doing well and recently announced her pregnancy. It seems like it won't be long before we all gather at the in-laws' house for a friendly meal.
Family trips are more enjoyable without the daughter-in-law. She's just in the way. From the window of the speeding car, my mother-in-law looked down on me with a mocking smile. It all started on the first day of a family vacation with my husband's family. On the way to a luxury hotel, we stopped at a highway gas station, and suddenly I was left behind all alone. I was completely lost and stood frozen on the spot, a moment I'll never forget. My name is Susan. I'm 30 years old, and I focus on housework, not working outside the home. My husband, Thomas, is a management consultant and often away from home. Since I spend a lot of time alone and my husband has been covering all of mother-in-law's living expenses since my father-in-law passed away, we decided to live with her in our home. Mother-in-law was thrilled that her only son was moving back home, but she seemed displeased that I, his wife, was coming along. I'm not glamorous and I have no interest in designer brands. I do a lot of water-related chores, so even with care, my hands get rough and I choose clothes that are easy to move in. To mother-in-law, I seemed like an embarrassing daughter-in-law to show others. Mother-in-law, Linda, has always been a show-off, obsessed with appearance and brands. She's long since spent her grandfather's inheritance and her savings, but she has no intention of changing her luxurious lifestyle, always begging my husband for more. My husband always firmly refused, saying, "I'm giving you living expenses, not money for luxuries." But mother-in-law never gave up, always causing trouble. Furthermore, my sister-in-law and her husband live nearby. Sister-in-law, Jessica, has the same character as her mother, always making snide remarks like, "Thomas could do better than a plain woman like you." She comes to our house every day, demanding meals, baths, and drinks, but never contributes money or helps with chores. "You're Thomas's wife, so it's only natural that you do all the housework. You're not good-looking, so at least keep the house clean. Thomas is too kind. Susan has always been poor and doesn't understand anything about brands, right?" Yet mother-in-law would tell my husband, "I do all the housework myself." And sister-in-law would claim, "We're good friends." I've been working in customer service, so I've been using that experience to avoid major conflicts with mother-in-law and sister-in-law for the past few years. But my husband noticed everything, from me doing all the housework to sister-in-law's terrible attitude, but he didn't confront them directly because I asked him not to. I wanted to avoid a complete breakdown with my husband's family, no matter what they did to me. My husband respected my feelings. "But you don't have to push yourself too hard. I'm okay with cutting ties and living separately." "Thank you, but I want to try a little harder." so I'm thinking of planning a family trip to improve our relationship. What do you think? That sounds good. I can take time off next month, so let's all go on this year's trip. Since we were dating, my husband and I have been traveling regularly. Even after moving in with my mother-in-law, my husband and I enjoy occasional trips just for the two of us. But once mother-in-law and my sister-in-law realized we were staying at luxury and famous hotels, they insisted on coming along. You two are so heartless, going on luxurious trips without us. From now on, take us with you and make sure it's extravagant. Because they were so persistent, I told them that this time we had booked a luxurious hotel for the whole family, including sister-in-law's husband. Mother-in-law and sister-in-law were thrilled. But just before the trip, my husband's work made it impossible for him to join us. I thought about postponing the trip, but mother-in-law had already bragged to the neighbors about the souvenirs, so she insisted we couldn't change the plans now. Reluctantly, I agreed to go with the four of us, excluding my husband. On the day, I put mother-in-law and sister-in-law's luggage in the trunk, and since there was no room left, I carried my travel bag inside the car. Throughout the drive, mother-in-law and sister-in-law kept making snide remarks from the back seat. Feeling fed up, I glanced at the empty passenger seat where only my travel bag sat, and I began to feel a little uneasy without my husband. Even as I drove onto the highway, mother-in-law's complaints never stopped. You're driving so slowly. Are you just careless because Thomas isn't here? Really? There was an accident today, so... You're just good at making excuses. You must have deceived Thomas the same way. I didn't deceive anyone. If only slow Susan weren't here, this trip would be more fun, right, Mom? Yes, indeed. Eventually, as we were about to arrive at yet another gas station, sister-in-law surprisingly suggested, "Let my husband drive the rest of the way. You must be tired, Susan." Having been forced to prepare mother-in-law's luggage and clean the house before our early departure, I was exhausted and agreed. "Susan, could you buy drinks for everyone?" As I got out of the car to switch drivers, mother-in-law gave me a friendly smile, unlike her usual self. Sure, that's fine. Mother-in-law and sister-in-law were unusually kind. Maybe they want to improve our relationship just like I do. That's good. I felt relieved and was about to walk away from the car when suddenly the engine started. And mother-in-law threw my luggage out of the car. Then mother-in-law yelled at me with a big smile. "Family trips are more enjoyable without the daughter-in-law. You're just in the way." I stood there, watching the car drive away, leaving me and my travel bag behind. I was completely lost and stood still for a moment. I will never forget the words mother-in-law said to me at that moment. Finally, I realized that no matter how much I did for mother-in-law and sister-in-law, it was all in vain. Reaching for my travel bag left in the parking space, my vision suddenly blurred. Surprised, I ran to the restroom, covering my eyes with a hand towel, and tears began to flow uncontrollably. I don't remember how long I was there, but I noticed a call on my mobile phone and checked the message. It was from my husband, who had finished work early, expressing concern about the trip with mother-in-law and the others. While I was reading the message, my husband called. "Thomas, I'm alone at a highway gas station right now." "What? What happened?" Hearing his voice, I couldn't help but cry again. He patiently listened to my explanation without rushing me. "I'm really sorry that Mom and the others did this to you. I'll come pick you up right away." "I'm sorry this happened." "Why are you apologizing, Susan?" "Because I wanted to get along with your precious family, and I couldn't." "I want you to tell me how you really feel. Do you still want to try to make things work with Mom and the others?" "Right now, I can only think that it's too difficult." "I see. I'm sorry for what my family did. I'll handle the separation and everything else with Mom and the others. But is it okay for you to leave your feelings as they are?" "My feelings?" "You've been holding back for me all this time, haven't you?" Thinking back, I realized that I had always been holding back. But I had been angry with my unreasonable mother-in-law and insensitive sister-in-law all this time. Yes, I can't be with those people. I absolutely hate it. Expressing the anger I had been suppressing felt surprisingly refreshing. You can do whatever you want from now on, Susan. I'll take care of the rest. I understand. No matter what happens, I won't let them anymore. I made that firm resolution. A few hours later, my husband came to pick me up at the gas station. Being with him made me naturally smile, and I realized how calmly and happily we could spend time together, even though we were traveling the same distance. I couldn't help but grin a little, even though I felt bad for my worried husband. Thanks to his thoughtful care, I was able to rest well when we got home. The next day, my husband made a surprising proposal. I've narrowed down the options for our new home to places near Susan's parents' house. What? What's going on all of a sudden? I want to make sure we're not bothered by Mom and the others, so let's finish moving during the 3 days of the trip. Will it be difficult for you to move, Susan? My careful and planned husband would never do something so sudden. I felt that he was quite angry inside, but he had a lovely smile for me. I'm all for moving. Let's get started right away. We quickly found a new home and moving company, and we were able to move without any problems. During this time, I received several emails from mother-in-law and the others. We're having the best trip without you. The hotel is luxurious and wonderful. Make sure it's at this level next time. Dinner was the most extravagant and delicious ever. It's even more fun without seeing Susan's ugly face. Traveling with just the family is so much more relaxing. The jacuzzi is amazing. Their enjoyment of the luxurious time at the high-end hotel came through clearly. Enjoy it while you can. I was looking forward to what would happen next. At around 10 a.m. on the checkout day, as expected, I received a call from mother-in-law. Susan, what's going on? What do you mean? They told me the accommodation fee is for $100,000 if the young lady isn't there. It's completely different from what you told us at first. It's only natural that the regular accommodation fee applies since I booked it through my connections and I'm not there. What do you mean? That hotel is run by my relatives. What? That's why we were able to stay at a special rate. Well, I didn't know that. By the way, all the hotels we've stayed at on our trips were run by those relatives, so we were able to stay at a discount. Susan, you've never told us that before. Thomas told me to keep quiet about it because if Linda and the others found out, they'd demand it be free. What's that? Anyway, the accommodation fee is correct, so please pay it yourself. Wait a minute, I can't pay $100,000. I didn't go on the trip, so I can't pay for you all. Don't say that, do something, we're family, right? You said the wife of your son isn't family, didn't you? You all enjoyed yourselves as a family, so please pay as a family. Goodbye. I ignored mother-in-law, who was still yelling on the other end of the phone, and hung up, feeling refreshed. In the end, mother-in-law and the others borrowed money from a shady source to pay for the accommodation or something like that. Furthermore, when they returned home, they couldn't get living expenses from my husband or me since we had moved, and they ended up fighting and parting ways with sister-in-law's family. Sister-in-law's family also deteriorated their relationship and divorced. Sister-in-law, abandoned by her husband and without income, looked for work in the nightlife, but seemed to have trouble finding employment due to her bad personality. With no one left to rely on, mother-in-law even went to my husband's company to seek help. At that time, mother-in-law looked older than her age, with hollow eyes, a haggard face, and dirty clothes. Even when she was crying and begging in the company lobby to live with us, my husband firmly declared a break in relations. After that, mother-in-law ended up working exhaustively at a terrible live-in job. Several years have passed, and now we have a lovely child and are living very happily. We are planning to stay at that luxury hotel we couldn't go to before, just the three of us, as a family. The hotel owner's relative invited us because they want to meet our child. We are looking forward to it very much.
My name is Emmeline. I am a 34-year-old stay-at-home mom. I live with my same-age husband, Reynolds, and our second-grade daughter, Wendy. After my father-in-law passed away due to illness a few years ago, we moved to a house near my mother-in-law's place, fearing she would be lonely on her own. It was my husband's idea, and since my parents lived nearby as well, it seemed convenient for visiting both families. I have two major concerns in my life. The first is my husband's constant affairs. Reynolds struggles to say no when women flirt with him, and he is easily distracted by new attractions. There were signs of this even when we were dating, but he had vowed to be faithful to me when he proposed. Perhaps it was my fault for choosing him, but I trusted him at that time. Nevertheless, he remained unchanged even after our marriage. Most of his infidelity was indirect, like exchanging messages, but we once nearly divorced due to his reckless behavior. During this crisis, Reynolds seemed genuinely remorseful. Considering my remaining feelings for him and our young daughter, I chose to rebuild our relationship rather than divorce. Still, whenever I see him glued to his phone, I can't help but suspect he is in contact with someone else. The second concern is the presence of my mother-in-law in the neighborhood. Since we moved here, she visits our home without notice whenever she has free time, nagging me relentlessly before she leaves. Initially, I figured she was lonely and tried to be understanding, but her behavior has escalated over time. By the time I realized how unreasonable she was, it was too late to do much about it. She would ruin the food I was preparing, criticize everything even down to the contents of my garbage bags, and generally do whatever she wanted. When I complained, Reynolds would just shrug it off with a silly grin. What's worse, mother-in-law always intervenes in our fights. Apparently, Reynolds would often complain to her, getting her on his side. When we argued about his infidelity in the past, she would side with him, saying, "No wonder he doesn't want to come home to a nagging wife like you." I was utterly shocked. Whenever mother-in-law attacks me, she always adds, "If only you had given birth to a boy." It's an outdated view that doesn't fit in today's world. I mean, how is that relevant right now? Every time she says that, I retort in my mind. After all, we're an ordinary family, and it's not like we're a prestigious family needing a male heir. I have to deal with my cheating, mother-obsessed husband and my mother-in-law who loves both her son and bullying her daughter-in-law. In this daily life filled with problems about the two of them, my daughter's smile is my only hope. I have thought about divorce numerous times, but as I'm currently unemployed and a full-time housewife, I worry about financial stability. Thinking about my growing daughter, I don't want to make her life harder. More importantly, I couldn't bear to take away her beloved father, so I have been unable to make the decision to divorce. One day, my daughter showed me a portrait she drew of me at school. In the picture, I was holding her hand and smiling. She's gotten quite good at drawing, I noticed. I smiled, feeling proud of my daughter's progress. Because of her, I can still keep going, as I stroked her head, saying, "Thank you." She grinned shyly. Then, on another regular day, while I was doing housework after seeing my husband and daughter off to work and school, my mother-in-law called. She had something for me and wanted me to come over to her house immediately. The call was demanding that I come to my mother-in-law's house immediately because she needed something. "Why don't you get what you need as you usually do, Mom?" By this point, I had developed some resistance to my mother-in-law's unreasonable demands and could retort back if she threw a word or two my way. "Well, summoning an old woman like me, what a cold-hearted daughter-in-law you are." As expected, my mother-in-law raised her voice very dramatically. I let out a sigh. Looking out the window, the outside was gloomy and dark. It looked like it was about to rain any moment. All right, I'll head over there in a bit." Saying that nonchalantly, I ended the call. I wasn't sure what she needed, but I could easily imagine that it was some minor chore, like always, a burnt-out light bulb, a bathtub that needed cleaning. I sped up the folding of the laundry, changed into something more comfortable, and headed over to my mother-in-law's place. Upon arrival, I was greeted by my mother-in-law. Took you long enough. However, she seemed unusually cheerful. Mom, do you have guests over? I tilted my head as I saw a pair of leather shoes and pumps neatly arranged at the entrance. Yes, there's someone I want you to meet. I was puzzled even more, but as I followed my mother-in-law into the living room, I found my husband who was supposed to be at work and an unfamiliar woman. Moreover, the woman had a noticeably large belly. Come on, have a seat. Prompted by my mother-in-law, I sat down. I thought you were at work? Bypassing the woman for the moment, my husband scratched his cheek awkwardly as I addressed him.
I took a paid day off. I have something I need to talk to you about today, and I asked Mom for help.
Is it about this lady? As I glanced at her, the woman was peeling an orange with a calm expression and munching on it. In contrast, my husband paled, trembled, and bowed his head deeply.
I got her pregnant. She's due in 3 months, and she says she wants to keep the baby, so I want a divorce.
When I saw the woman's belly, I had more or less guessed.
I couldn't bring myself to tell you, and while I was procrastinating, her belly kept growing.
Seeing that, my husband pathetically apologized and asked for a divorce. I let out a big sigh. Who was that apology for? It was an apology to push through his own demands, not an apology to me. Knowing that, I couldn't hold back the sadness that welled up inside me. Were you not thinking about Wendy? How could you interact with Wendy while you were having an affair? This was something I had said to my husband when we were in a terrible state due to his previous affair. But I told you to think about Wendy, not me. If you ever feel like having an affair again, didn't I? My husband adored our daughter. That's why I cried and told him that his affair would not only hurt me, but also our beloved daughter, but it seems it didn't deter him at all. This isn't an affair, it's real love. A gentle voice interrupted the conversation between my husband and me. The woman he cheated with was looking at us with a calm smile. Reynolds always told me that he loved me more than his wife and daughter. That's why I could get pregnant with a boy that his mother desired as a symbol of our love. Saying that, she smiled, and while saying right, she stroked her belly. Her audacity was so outrageous that I was more flabbergasted than angry. I couldn't believe he dared to say something like that in this situation. Then, my silent mother-in-law decided to speak up. Well, unlike you, Marcia is young, gentle, and kind-hearted. I completely support your divorce. Turns out, the mistress's name was Marcia. I would think a kind-hearted young lady wouldn't go getting herself pregnant with a married man's child. I muttered this under my breath, and my mother-in-law glared at me in irritation. Enough out of you. You're done here. You only give birth to girls, so just get divorced and leave quickly. My mother-in-law, shooing me away with a wave of her hand, shouted at me. My husband wouldn't meet my eyes, and Marcia stroked her pregnant belly with a victorious grin. I understand about the divorce. I will take care of Wendy. I felt as if I was being driven out, and I ran out of my in-laws' house. As expected, it had started to rain outside. I had brought an umbrella when I came, but I had left it at the entrance of my in-laws' house. That was my favorite one too. But at this point, I didn't care about such things. I let out a dry laugh and began my walk home in the rain. The divorce proceeded uneventfully, and before I knew it, 3 months had passed. My ex-husband was reluctant to part with our daughter, but he seemed to understand the gravity of his actions, and in the end agreed to my demands for alimony and child support. He seems to have prepared the alimony by selling the condo we lived in. I was mentally and physically exhausted, but thanks to the lawyer my dad introduced me, the process was quicker than I had anticipated. My main concern was my daughter, but she continued to smile at me even after the divorce. I knew she was trying to put on a brave face for me. We were staying at my parents' house for now, and she was still going to the same school, but depending on where we would live and my job, we might have to consider switching schools. My daughter seemed to understand this, but I knew she felt differently inside. There is nothing more heartbreaking than seeing your child suffer because of a parent's selfish actions. I spent my days looking for a new home and a job within my daughter's school district, trying my best to keep her from feeling lonely. That's when I received a call from my ex-husband. I had left him my contact information in case of issues regarding child support. Depending on the matter, I was planning to hang up on him, but I answered the call. As soon as I picked up, he started panicking.
The color of our baby's eyes.
I was taken aback by the abruptness of his statement. We agreed you wouldn't contact me unless it's about child support or something necessary. I tried to reply calmly.
That's not the point. I've been deceived.
I could have ignored him and hung up, but I was curious about what he was talking about, so I decided to listen.
The baby that was born has black eyes and black hair too.
To make a long story short, Marcia had apparently given birth recently, but it seemed that the baby's lineage was definitely not American. By the way, it seemed that the baby was indeed a boy. I had heard that he had married Marcia immediately after our divorce, and I had to restrain myself from laughing.
Marcia was seeing multiple men besides me. One of them was apparently Japanese. I can't believe it.
My ex-husband was expressing his anger as if he were the victim. Continuing, he vented out his frustrations.
This is a scam. When I threatened to sue, they said they picked me because I seem to have the most money. Can you believe it? It's too much.
Neither my ex-husband, his mother, nor the woman who gave birth herself probably ever imagined it would come to this. But ultimately, it's karma. So I have no sympathy. What, you're seeing this? At my words, my ex-husband is clearly taken aback, and I can't help but smirk. Did this man think I was going to console him? Well, cheaters don't belong together, don't they? What does it matter if their eyes are black? It's undoubtedly the boy your dear mother wished for. At my words, my ex-husband is visibly shaken.
But I'm planning to break up with Marcia. I was hoping we could get back together.
I hold my head in my hands as my ex-husband stammers out a request for a remarriage.
Mom also thinks it would be a good idea.
At this unwarranted addition, my anger explodes. I hope you live happily with your wife, who is just like your dear mother and your cute black-haired, black-eyed baby. By the way, it seems you have forgotten, but if the baby was delivered safely, I'll be claiming damages for the affair from Marcia. Be prepared for that. I spit out those words, hang up the phone, and promptly switch off my mobile. I originally intended to wait until Marcia gave birth to demand damages out of consideration for the baby. This call let me know the baby has been born, so it's a good time. But at the same time, I feel a growing sense of danger at my ex-husband's suggestion for reconciliation. Until now, I have been looking for a place to live and work in this area to prevent my daughter from having to switch schools. But I'm starting to think it might be better to move to a place out of their reach. That evening, I was having dinner with Mom and my daughter. Dad hasn't come home from work yet. My daughter is excited to watch anime together when Grandpa comes home. Even Mom is looking forward to it, saying, maybe Grandma should join in too. Our peaceful moment is abruptly interrupted by the sudden ringing of the intercom. Wondering who it could be at this hour, I peek at the screen to see my ex-husband and his mother. Wendy, stay with Grandma for a bit. I leave my daughter with Mom and open the front door, leaving the chain on. There is a loud click as the door opens forcefully. I'm glad I left the chain on. Just as I think this, I hear a clicking sound and see my ex-husband's mother peeking in. Behind her, my ex-husband stands with a downcast face. Ray's offering to take you back and you turned him down? Ray is my ex-husband. His mother has been calling him that since he was a child, it seems. You don't have a chance of getting remarried with a child. Don't you understand Ray's kindness? Mind your own business. You have a new daughter-in-law who gave birth to your long-awaited grandson with black hair and black eyes. Get along with her. At my words, mother-in-law's face turned red. If I knew she was that kind of woman, I would have put up with you. Pushing mother-in-law aside, my ex-husband now reaches out from the gap in the door.
Emmeline, I truly regret what I did. I was deceived too. Let's build a happy family together this time.
At the front door, my ex-husband rattled the doorknob, crying, pleading, while my irate ex-mother-in-law shouted at him. I was at a loss as to what to do in this bizarre situation, but then an unexpected person managed to silence them both. Dad, you guys always pick on Mom. I hate you. When I turned around, my daughter was standing there with tears in her eyes. Mom, running up from behind her, was trying to keep her away from the door. In Mom's hand was her smartphone. Your father and our lawyer are on their way over. It turned out she had been in touch with my dad and the lawyer who had helped me during the divorce. Wendy must have taken advantage of the chaos to come over to my place. I felt a little relieved at Mom's words. I was honestly scared of the intense energy the two were exuding, almost as if they would break in any moment. Wendy, why don't you wait over there with Grandma? But Wendy stubbornly shook her head. I'll protect Mommy. I hate Daddy and his friend, she declared, bursting into tears. I couldn't help but tear up at the sight and pulled her into my arms. My ex-mother-in-law and ex-husband just stood there dumbstruck. All of their prior aggression seemed to vanish, leaving their faces void of any life. Wendy's words had hit them hard. While all this was going on, Dad and the lawyer finally arrived, and to top it off, a police car showed up as well. It seems the neighbors had called the police.
Reynolds, your daughter will never be with you again. If you truly regret what you have done, then you know what you should be doing, and it's not this.
I spoke up after Dad standing before my ex-husband and mother-in-law. Please don't hurt Wendy anymore. I won't ever comply with your demands. I never want to be involved with you again. My words, followed by Dad's, seemed to hit them hard. They grimaced, nodded, and quietly got into the police car. The lawyer assured us,
I'll take stricter measures to ensure this never happens again.
He would be dealing with the compensation for Marcia, my ex-husband's mistress, among other things. I deeply bowed my head in gratitude for his forthcoming assistance. I later heard that my ex-husband ended up divorcing Marcia and suing her. Marcia had apparently turned to the Japanese father of her baby for help. While he had accepted the baby, it turns out he already had a family and his wife forced Marcia to leave. Now, Marcia faces demands for compensation not only from me and my ex-husband, but also from the wife of her baby's father. I can't help but worry about her future and hope for the best for her child. My ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law are now the talk of the neighborhood, leading a miserable life together. My ex-husband has increased his overtime to pay the child support and remaining compensation, working like a horse but making sure to pay on time. As for me and Wendy, we have moved to a place where we have no connection with my ex-husband and his mother. Thanks to an old contact, I have found work again, and Wendy is enjoying her new school and making friends. I am determined to live a strong life. Looking forward to watching my daughter grow up.
Some people live so lavishly, even without kids. It's tough to make a living, especially when you're not even having kids. I want a child too. Yet my husband, my father-in-law, and my mother-in-law are relentless, oblivious to my desperation and sadness. My husband looks at me as if he's disappointed. I can't help but blame myself for not being able to conceive. My name is Emily. I'm a 35-year-old homemaker. My husband is also 35 and works a corporate job. We've been married for 5 years and have been unable to have kids. This has been a burden on me for a long time. Emily, still no kids? Yes, I'm sorry. It's getting late. While your father-in-law is still the head doctor, we need our grandkids to be doctors. We have our needs too. 3 months into our marriage, my mother-in-law first said this to me. Ever since her words became routine, and I've been stressing and blaming myself. My husband's parents run a hospital. His father is the head doctor, and his sister is the deputy. It's a fairly large hospital. As the eldest son, my husband wanted to be a doctor too. However, he couldn't get into med school due to poor grades. He seems to insist that our child must become a doctor and inherit the hospital. Until you're 35. What are you talking about? You have until you're 35 to have a kid. That's the deal. But it's not something that can be achieved just by trying. My husband, like my mother-in-law, set a deadline, which makes me anxious. Our future child must be a doctor. Otherwise, there's no benefit for me. According to my husband, his sister will inevitably take over once his dad retires. Then our child will become a doctor and take the seat of the third-generation head doctor. That's the plan. Truth is, his sister has a daughter in middle school who excels in studies and dreams of becoming a doctor like her mom. My father-in-law adores her. So there's already a candidate to inherit the hospital. Although it's not like there's no successors, my husband seems to have different thoughts. If this continues, his sister will become the second-generation head doctor, but he cannot stand the thought of letting her daughter inherit after that. And agreeing with him is my mother-in-law. She adores my husband and feels sorry that he couldn't become a doctor. That's why she keeps nagging me to have a child soon. He couldn't become a doctor due to his lack of aptitude. Holding on to that dream for their grandchild seems misguided. Amid these conflicting intentions, I ended up being suspected of infertility 2 years into our marriage and had to see a specialist. Since my father-in-law's hospital didn't offer the service, my sister-in-law introduced me to a friend who's a doctor. Upon returning from my first consultation, my mother-in-law immediately called. "What's the issue? Do you have some sort of defect?" I was stunned by her bluntness, but reminded myself that she's always straightforward, and answered, "No, they didn't say it was a flaw, but stress could be a factor. They recommend taking it easy." Then, from the other side of the phone, I hear my father-in-law shouting,
"Bring those test results here now."
"So quit your job and laze around the house all day. What stress could you possibly have?" "I'm sorry." I had to listen to my mother-in-law's lectures for a while longer before hanging up. At that moment, I didn't realize I'd have to go through many more conversations like this. My struggle with not being able to conceive started affecting my husband too. He began finding faults in everything I did.
"So you've been home all day, just watching TV?"
"I've been doing chores."
"Really? Then why is there so much dust everywhere?"
He snapped, wiping surfaces to show me the dust. "All right, I might have missed a few spots. I'll be more careful."
"What's your problem? I'm providing for you, aren't I?"
My husband's irritation escalated quickly, and I usually chose to stay silent to avoid fights. Then he leaned in and said,
"Just hurry up and have a baby,"
before storming off. Life at home was growing more and more strained. While facing the ongoing pressure to have children from my husband and mother-in-law, I started wondering if the problem might actually be with him. Not that I was suspicious, but if I'm healthy, it's reasonable to consider whether he might be the issue. However, both he and my mother-in-law dismissed the idea outright. One day, I mustered the courage to discuss it with him. "Don't you think we should get checked? I don't seem to have any issues. What about you?"
"What are you implying? That I'm the reason we can't have kids?"
"I'm not accusing you of anything. But if it's an issue, we need to treat it, right?"
"You're joking. There's no way I'm the problem."
He stormed off, furious. I tried bringing it up in different ways, asking him to consider testing. But he was stuck on blaming me. I couldn't push it further, and the problem remained unresolved. Then, a shocking event unfolded. I found out my husband was cheating. He was coming home late every day, looking uneasy and restless. I had suspicions, but didn't plan on gathering evidence. At that point, love might have already been missing from our relationship. One day my husband and I visited his parents' house. As always, I felt overwhelmed by my mother-in-law's nagging about having kids and my father-in-law's comments suggesting we should check for fertility issues. Then, my husband dropped a bombshell.
"You know, I might have a kid with someone else. If that happens, I won't need you."
His mother chimed in. "At this point, I don't care who has David's child. Anyone will do." They both laughed, uproariously. I felt my patience nearing its end. Time passed aimlessly as my husband continued his affairs with his mother's approval. Then I got a message from my sister-in-law saying she was in the area. We met up at a local cafe, and she had surprising advice for me. "Emily, why not go back to work?" "I'd love to, but you know they'd be against it. You haven't been able to have kids even as a homemaker. Plus, you have a nursing degree, so why not use it?" I always found great fulfillment in my work as a nurse. My sister-in-law had watched me suffer quietly and said that enough was enough with my in-laws. "You're becoming their stress ball," she said, pushing me to talk to my husband about returning to my nursing job. However, he flat out refused.
"What if you get pregnant? You'll just quit, causing trouble for everyone,"
he argued, making it sound like my only job was to bear children. I snapped back. What about you? You haven't even checked if you're the issue, blaming everything on me.
Shut up. It's all your fault.
5 years into the marriage, my love for my husband had utterly evaporated. When we got divorced, my mother-in-law said,
You wasted 5 years of our lives. You couldn't even give us a grandchild.
I stood my ground. Are you sure it's all my fault? David never took any tests. I looked her straight in the eye and declared, I will have a child. 2 years have passed since then. I returned to my nursing career and threw myself into my work to forget those painful 5 years of marriage. I'm currently working at a specialized clinic for women with fertility issues, the very same place my sister-in-law introduced me to when I was married. I currently work at a fertility clinic, the same one my sister-in-law introduced me to when I was struggling with fertility. Life had finally settled down, and I decided to catch up with my high school friends via email. I had a friend returning from overseas work in New York, so we all agreed to meet up. I wasn't exactly free to move around, but neither were my friends, so I took the lead in planning a get-together that wouldn't be a burden for anyone. Thanks to my supportive family, I managed to make it to the restaurant we agreed upon, despite the busy preparations. In a private room at the restaurant, we all had a great time catching up and reminiscing. After a while, I excused myself saying, I'll be right back, and left the room. The restaurant was bustling, filled with lively conversations. Among the chatter, it was easy to pick out a familiar voice. Long time no see, I said, approaching a table for 7. All eyes at the table turned toward me. Among them was a face that couldn't hide its surprise.
What are you doing here?
My ex-husband David looked at the twins I was holding, and his face turned to one of shock. His parents, sitting across from him, were equally shocked. Yes, I had remarried after divorcing David, and was now a mother of twins. What's the meaning of this? Interrupting our meal? How rude! My former sister-in-law, sitting next to my former mother-in-law, continued eating as if nothing had happened. I told you during the divorce, didn't I? I wanted to show you my adorable babies. Did you now? Don't play dumb. I was bullied for being the wife who couldn't get pregnant by both David and you.
That's a baseless accusation.
Really? You said it was my fault. You said it was all my fault for not being able to have kids. Yet you never even got yourself tested. David averted his eyes and clenched his fists on the table. And you threatened to have a child with someone else. Your mother even said it didn't matter who gave birth, remember? As I said this, a few of my friends approached and said, David, long time no see. We've heard a lot from Emily. You've changed a lot since high school, haven't you? David and I were high school classmates, so the friends I was meeting today were also his classmates. The ones looking stunned were a modest-looking woman sitting next to my ex-husband, and people who seemed to be his parents. I'm sorry for interrupting. Were you announcing your marriage? If so, let me give you some advice as your senior in this household. My ex-husband and his mother looked shocked and tried to stop me. Ignoring them, I raised my voice and said to the woman, Can you have kids? If you don't have them soon, you'll be bullied by these two, you know? The woman looked instantly uneasy and exchanged glances with her parents. Then my former sister-in-law, who had been quietly eating, spoke up. If you're worried, you should back out. What she said is true. It's embarrassing, but that's how our family is.
What are you talking about, sis?
You're not after Emily's child, are you? You're after Dad's position as the hospital director, right? Let's talk about that later. Who says the director has to be a doctor? I'm stepping down, so go ahead. With that, she placed her napkin on the table and said, I've been invited by a friend who's a doctor. Why don't you come to our fertility clinic? Everyone was speechless at her words. Yes, my former sister-in-law had always supported me behind the scenes. She had always felt uncomfortable with how her parents ran the hospital, their attitude towards patients, and my brother's ambitions. She even helped me with this revenge. She was the one who told me about the restaurant and my ex-husband's pre-wedding meeting. Unable to take it anymore, my ex-husband's girlfriend left the scene with her parents. My ex-husband tried to chase after her, and smoothed things over, but was yelled at by her father, collapsed on the spot, and started crying. Seeing this, my former mother-in-law also started crying, and my father-in-law couldn't stop shaking. Afterward, my former sister-in-law officially resigned from my ex-father-in-law's hospital. She came to work as a doctor at the fertility clinic where I work. After she left, the number of patients at my father-in-law's hospital plummeted, partly because she was well-liked and partly because of the restaurant incident. My ex-husband quit his job and tried to turn the business around, but apparently it was pointless. With my former sister-in-law, who was the deputy director, gone, and my ex-husband's engagement broken off, the future of the hospital looked bleak. It's only a matter of time before it changes hands. As for my ex-husband, he seems to be spending his days tormented by emptiness, having lost both his girlfriend and his job, and watching the declining hospital with his parents. As for me, I'm living the happiest life, busy with my twin babies, and still able to work in my calling as a nurse, alongside my husband, who's also a nurse.
I'm Linda, 30 years old. Not too long ago, I worked as a pharmacy clerk, but now I'm on maternity leave, raising my 3-month-old daughter. My husband, John, works in the medical field. We met through a colleague of his, dated for 3 years, got married, and then our daughter was born. Originally, we planned to rent a small apartment and live happily as a family of 3. However, my mother-in-law kept insisting that we live with her. My father-in-law passed away from an illness a few years ago, and now she lives alone in their house. My husband has an older brother, 3 years his senior. Originally, the plan was for his brother to take over the family business. However, they've always had a rocky relationship with their mother. His brother loved drawing and wanted to work in the animation industry. Despite their mother's objections, he moved to Boston to pursue his dream. Well, my mother-in-law has always been a bit of a meddler. She's the type who needs to know everything that's going on. When my brother-in-law would finish his part-time job a bit late, she'd call his workplace just to check if he was still there. No matter how many times we asked her to stop, she'd cry and say, "I'm just worried about you. Why would you say that to me?" Eventually, brother-in-law got so fed up that he moved out right after high school. I can't blame him. I would have done the same. It wasn't just brother-in-law. My husband also had his fair share of issues with mother-in-law's behavior. They had a lot of conflicts over the years. To this day, mother-in-law can't seem to understand. She'd say, "He's such a disappointment. How could he betray his parents' expectations?" Every time we met, she'd bring it up, and it was getting old. With brother-in-law gone, mother-in-law kept saying she was lonely and wanted us to live with her. While moving in together was a big ask, I felt bad seeing her cry. My husband's family home was in the countryside with a lot of land. They had built a house there, thinking brother-in-law would eventually live in it, so we decided to move there. Since we'd be neighbors, we'd set some ground rules.
We might be family, but don't interfere with our lives. Don't come into our house without asking. Stick to the rules, okay?
Knowing mother-in-law, she'd probably want to be involved in our lives. I could already see the eagerness in her eyes. But we couldn't let her disrupt our happiness. Thankfully, my husband was firm with her, and she reluctantly agreed, saying, "All right, I understand." Maybe she realized it wouldn't be in her best interest for us to leave, so she listened to my husband. For a while, she really did keep her distance. She'd call before visiting to see our daughter, and things seemed to be going well. I started to think that maybe this could work. But I didn't realize that this was just the calm before the storm. Our daughter had severe colic and cried loudly every night. We tried feeding her, changing her diaper, and everything else, but nothing worked. "It's okay. What's the matter, Jennifer?" Holding my crying daughter. I gently pat her back, remembered a friend telling me that when her baby had severe colic, she'd take her for a drive. I tried it, and while my daughter would fall asleep in the car, she'd wake up as soon as we got home. It wasn't really helping. As if that wasn't stressful enough, there's been another issue lately. Mother-in-law has started making surprise visits in the middle of the night, especially when my husband is working late. On this particular night, my husband was on a late shift. Despite it being past 1 a.m. and my daughter crying loudly, mother-in-law showed up again.
Do you even know what time it is? It's so disruptive to have her crying this loud. Make her stop.
She was yelling at my 3-month-old daughter to be quiet. Hey, what are you doing? Please be quiet. You're scaring Jennifer, and she won't stop crying. I was sleep-deprived and frustrated, so I snapped back at mother-in-law. We had agreed she wouldn't interfere when we moved in, but lately she's been coming over more and more, especially when my husband isn't around. If this continues, I'll talk to my husband, and we might just leave. Being a new mom was already challenging, and mother-in-law's behavior was making it even harder. The next day, I considered telling my husband about the incident, but he came home looking exceptionally tired, so I held back. Time flew by with the demands of childcare, and before I knew it, my husband was working another night shift. That night, my daughter's crying was particularly intense. In my desperation to soothe her, I didn't notice mother-in-law entering our house. I sensed the bedroom door opening and turned to see mother-in-law walking in uninvited. Whoa! I was so startled to see her that I let out a surprised shout. Suddenly, I noticed a bat in mother-in-law's hand.
Your child's crying is too loud. Make her stop.
She yelled, raising the bat. Watch out! In an instant, I shielded my daughter from the impending threat. A sharp pain hit my head and everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I was in a hospital bed. My husband was beside me. Holding my throbbing head, I anxiously asked, "Where's Jennifer? Is she okay?" Clinging to my husband, I sought reassurance about our daughter.
Calm down. Linda, Jennifer's fine. A pediatrician is checking on her right now.
Hearing that she was safe, tears streamed down my face. But my relief was short-lived when I heard the next piece of information. Apparently, mother-in-law had called the ambulance, and her story was outrageous. She claimed she heard a loud noise in the middle of the night, and upon checking our house, she found me lying in a pool of blood. She suggested we might have been attacked by a burglar. Moreover, she had taken photos of the scene and sent them to my husband, who was at work, via WhatsApp. The audacity of her actions sent chills down my spine. What is she talking about? She is the one who hit me, right? Why is she fabricating this burglar story? I can't forgive her. At that moment, I revealed everything about mother-in-law's behavior to my husband. I should have told him sooner. What if something had happened to our daughter? The mere thought drained the color from my face. After hearing everything, my husband was shaking with rage. Despite our agreement to keep boundaries, not only did she break her promise, but she also entered our home uninvited in the middle of the night and tried to assault me because of our daughter's crying. My husband immediately went home to check our security camera footage. I had previously told him about mother-in-law's verbal abuse. Since there was no evidence, and he didn't want to take sides, we had installed a surveillance camera to gather proof. I was planning to check the camera footage and warn my mother-in-law after confirming that she was using abusive language. We never imagined it would capture something like this. The footage clearly showed mother-in-law, bat in hand, attacking me. The camera caught her ignoring my crying daughter, ransacking the room to make it look like a burglary, and even casually taking photos as evidence. Afterwards,
it recorded her shaky voice calling the ambulance. Her acting was so convincing that even my husband was taken aback. Of course, we couldn't let this slide just because she's family. My husband handed the footage over to the police. After reviewing it, officers went to mother-in-law's place and took her to the station for questioning. She clearly hadn't expected a camera in the room. Upon realizing this, she exploded in anger, accusing me of deception. "You tricked me! I can't forgive that woman!" she ranted, but I hadn't tricked her. She entered our home, assaulted me, and left our crying daughter alone. Everything was her doing. I hadn't deceived anyone. Still, mother-in-law remained unrepentant, causing a scene at the police station and insisting on her innocence. With the evidence against her, her claims of innocence were futile. We filed a report, and mother-in-law ended up with a criminal record. The incident even made the local news, making her the talk of the town. We realized we couldn't raise our daughter in peace here. With that in mind, we decided to move. So, we decided to move to a high-security apartment. Previously, my workplace was a 15-minute train ride away, but now it's 30 minutes. The commute is longer, but everything we need is within walking distance, and the convenience is worth it. We can raise our daughter here in peace. When we moved, we didn't tell our neighbors where we were going. We feared someone might inadvertently tell mother-in-law, who would then show up at our new place. That would ruin the peace and security we sought, so we kept our move a secret. Naturally, when mother-in-law returned to our old place, she found it empty. We later heard from brother-in-law that mother-in-law had been incessantly calling him, demanding to know our whereabouts, but brother-in-law, knowing her nature all too well, kept our secret. According to brother-in-law, when mother-in-law returned home, she predictably went around the neighborhood asking about our whereabouts. But given the recent incident, the neighbors, fearing for their own safety, didn't engage with her. They didn't want to get involved with someone so unstable. The community here is tight-knit, and no one felt safe with her around. Rumors spread about her erratic behavior. Perhaps hearing these whispers, mother-in-law couldn't bear it any longer. She sold her house and moved away. With the money, she frequented bars almost every night, drinking heavily. Eventually, she became infatuated with a young male staff member and began spending lavishly on him. Apparently because he designated that person and generously opened several bottles, each bill became expensive. Her bills skyrocketed, and before she knew it, she was millions in debt. Yet she believed everything would work out and continued her reckless behavior. But then, disaster struck. Due to her excessive drinking, she collapsed and was rushed to the hospital. The doctor said she needed immediate surgery. After the procedure, she had to stay in the hospital for a while. While in the hospital, she kept calling us saying, "I feel so alone here. I want you to visit me after I'm discharged. I want you to live with me and take care of me." Has she forgotten what she did to me back then? She's been so selfish in her demands. I mean, who would want to care for a mother who hit her daughter-in-law and put her granddaughter in danger? Besides, I've heard that my brother-in-law has a fiancé, and he doesn't want to introduce her to such a dangerous person. After all, we have a restraining order against her because of that incident. Even now I see her, I might collapse from the traumatic flashbacks. For these reasons, no one can take care of her anymore. But she says, "It's been months since then, and I've reflected on my actions, so please take care of me now." I'm sorry, but I can't just move on from that incident. The scars from that time are still fresh. Just because she's remorseful, everything should be forgiven? That's not how it works. Every day, her persistent calls became too much, so I blocked her on WhatsApp and my phone. Given her current state, I doubted she'd hire a detective to find us. so I felt relieved after blocking her. But her persistence hasn't changed. After being discharged, she went to my husband's workplace, trying to find an opportunity to meet him. She was waiting near the staff entrance, and at first the employees thought she was there for a meeting or something. But when she kept showing up day after day, glaring intently, the security guard decided to approach her, and she left. Still, she came back another day, waiting for my husband at the same entrance. This time, the security guard immediately called the police, and 15 minutes later, they arrived and took her to the police station. Turns out, my husband was away for training that day, so she couldn't have met him even if she waited. When he found out, he apologized to his workplace. Thankfully, it ended without any major issues. A few days later, she called me from a payphone, blaming me. "It's all Linda's fault. Because of Linda, this happened. I shouldn't have let him marry Linda. You need to take responsibility and care for me." Why is she blaming me for her actions? It's all her fault. It's wrong to put the blame on me. What are you talking about? Do you even understand the root cause? The past might be the past for you, but it's not for me. I still have scars, and sometimes I can't sleep because of the trauma. I don't want to see you anymore. I don't want to see her. When I said that, she raised her voice. "It's because Linda is weak-hearted. When you're married, sometimes you need to forgive. Linda caused all this fuss, and now my life is in ruins. Take responsibility." She was yelling over the phone, but I didn't respond. Previously, my lawyer advised me to record any interactions with her and to screenshot any WhatsApp messages or emails for evidence. So I always had a voice recorder in my bag ready to use. Of course, I reported everything to my lawyer. Perhaps she got a notice from the lawyer because she stopped calling me after that. My husband decided it was the last straw. He called her and warned that if she continued this behavior, we'd call the police again, and then he hung up. Immediately after, we changed our mobile phone numbers. My brother-in-law did the same, and finally, we felt free from her. However, in case of emergencies, we gave our number to my uncle, a former police officer. We trusted him not to accidentally share it with her. Plus, she's always been wary of him, so she wouldn't dare call him. After explaining everything to my uncle, he assured us he'd handle things if needed. Later on, she decided to find a job to pay off her debts. Due to her age, she couldn't find a high-paying job. She tried calling relatives to borrow money, but no one was willing to help. Desperate, she took on multiple part-time jobs to repay her debts. But she struggled with relationships at work and had difficulty learning tasks. She often got yelled at by her younger boss. On a brighter note, my daughter stopped having nightmares. Now she sleeps peacefully, making it hard to believe she ever had such troubles. Perhaps our old home wasn't a comfortable place for her. From now on, I hope for peaceful days with my husband and daughter.
It's all thanks to our second son being gone. We now have the chance to meet again like this. What I heard from my room were the heartless words of my own husband. In the conversation between my husband and our eldest son's wife, laced with vulgar laughter, I felt a chill pierce through my heart. Even our typically gentle eldest son, who had been watching the screen with me, was trembling silently with anger. When they return, we need to have a proper conversation. Yes, indeed. I wonder what excuses they'll come up with. Amid the gathering of relatives, the self-incriminating evidence they provided could not have been more convenient. By now, everyone present was on my side and my eldest son's side. Along with our angry relatives, we were anxiously awaiting for the two of them to return, soon to be the targets of our collective anger. My name is Serena. I'm 64 years old this year. I had believed I was just another average family, having raised 2 sons. But only recently, I realized how such ordinary happiness could be shattered so easily. I had lost my younger son in a car accident, and I was sinking into despair. Why did Carlos have to be in such an accident? Enough already, don't you think? How long are you going to keep moaning about the past? Despite our son's sudden death in an accident, my husband harshly dismissed me with cold words. Moreover, even with the upcoming funeral, I felt my heart freeze as I saw my husband without a single tear in his eyes. At the signal of our eldest son coming to pick us up, I heard a single honk from outside. I put our pet cat in the cage and headed for the entrance. But who would have thought that Carlos would have been gone so soon? You too, Lucas? You and your son are so depressing. Isn't it natural? I'd rather ask, how can you be so calm? Father-in-law is just trying to send Carlos off with a smile, isn't he? That's right, that's exactly it. Even in the car, my husband's attitude didn't change. He said those words while laughing loudly, ha ha ha. Even the wife of our eldest son was smiling as she watched my husband. The two of them have this way of making remarks that grate on your nerves, even on a normal day. Usually, I'd just let it slide, knowing their character from years of experience, but not today. The thought of a biological father's heartless words and my son's wife defending such words was unbearable, considering how much our eldest son loved his younger brother. I slapped my husband's knee, who was sitting next to me, and pointed out, "Enough is enough. Despite our family's misfortune, how can you be so cheerfully indifferent?" Ouch. So what, you want me to put on a gloomy face? I'm just asking for some decency. We're not children, so don't be loud at the funeral home. No matter how old you get, you remain a nagging, strict wife. As if he could not let my words go unanswered, my husband retorted with childish insults, appearing agitated. Feeling the tension fill the car, and realizing further discussion would be futile, I sighed, staring out at the window. I understood, as my husband said, that it wasn't necessarily better to cry or grieve. That's why I thought the best we could do was to see our second son off to his peaceful sleep quietly. That was my only wish, but these two wouldn't even allow that, and they were about to create a huge mess. Catching up with relatives at the venue, we exchanged quick greetings, chatting about old times with those who had come from afar, those who had once adored our second son. I couldn't help but tear up. This has been such a heartbreaking time for you. Carlos was such a sweet, good boy. I can't believe he was just on the brink of adulthood. Thank you for your condolences. Every time our second son's name came up, I gave them a firm hug, expressing my gratitude. Meanwhile, my husband showed no sign of remorse for his behavior in the car. Instead, he was loudly chatting about golf and other fun topics with a relative he hadn't seen in a while. How about it? Want to hang out together next time? Ken, isn't today your son's funeral? I didn't say we should go today, did I? That would obviously be inappropriate. Will you stop already? How many times do I have to say it? I reprimanded my husband in a low voice. He was so absorbed in his own world. I felt like I was scolding a child who had no manners, but my husband just brushed it off with a dismissive gesture, not even bothering to hide his annoyance. Does he really understand what today is about? I furrowed my brows at my husband's behavior, wondering how things had come to this. Was he broken by the shock of our second son's death? Well, Margareta does it too. At home, she's always comparing me and my dad. Is that so? My oldest son's words stirred unease in my heart. I wanted to believe there was a reason for my husband's behavior, like stubbornness that comes with age. But seeing the disappointed look on my oldest son's face, I couldn't help but look over at the two of them. Although they were quieter than before, they were still smiling and chatting together. I shook my head. They do seem too close. Right? But Dad's already 65. He wouldn't have inappropriate feelings for his son's wife. Surely not. There's an age gap. They wouldn't do something so embarrassing. Jokingly, we continued to chat and laugh. Perhaps somewhere deep down, my son and I were hoping and reassuring each other that it was true, but despite our worries, the two of them continued to chat happily. During a break in the funeral, I noticed my husband heading toward the exit of the venue when I went to the restroom. Following him, I saw my daughter-in-law by his side, just about to step outside. "Hold on, you two. Where are you going?" "Oh, it's you. Margareta said she's not feeling well, so I thought I'd let her get some fresh air outside." "Is that so? Are you okay, Margareta?" "Yes, I think I'll be fine if I rest a bit." After watching the two of them leave, I returned to my seat and whispered the situation to my eldest son. He seemed surprised that his wife was feeling unwell and that they had stepped out together. "Ah, so that's why he borrowed the car keys. Wait, they went in the car? I wonder where they're going. Maybe they didn't want to worry us. It would have been hard to bring up with me in this state." Pointing to his tear-stained eyes, my eldest son responded. I couldn't help but wonder if those two were capable of such thoughtfulness, yet I didn't pay much attention to it at the time, thinking it was simply their nature. However, when the two didn't even return when it was time for the meal after the funeral, we couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. "How'd it go?" "No good. I tried calling them, but couldn't get through to either of them." "I hope nothing serious happened." My eldest son had tried to reach out to them, but to no avail. I had sent an email myself, but there was no response. My eldest son's car hadn't returned, and we were at a loss each time a relative asked us about their whereabouts. Did they get so sick that they had to go to the hospital? If that's the case, they should at least let us know. They're not dogs or cats. They'll come home eventually. Cats. Oh, I wonder how our cat is doing. While talking with the relatives, I suddenly remembered the pet cat we had left alone in my room. I took out my mobile phone and activated the pet camera. For some reason, our cat was out of its cage and I could hear someone's voice. Huh? Upon hearing the unexpected human voice, I initially felt a chill as if a burglar had broken into our house. But the voice that was casually picking up our cat was something we had heard quite often. Margareta? And doesn't that sound like Dad's voice too? Wait, are they saying they've come home? I exchanged glances with my eldest son and continued to stare at the screen in confusion. When I increased the volume coming from the mobile phone, I heard an unbelievable conversation. "Isn't this cat cute? Can we take it home?" "What's the point of keeping an old cat? I'll get you a much cuter kitten." "Yay! I love you, father-in-law." Just when I thought I heard such sweet voices, I could see my bed shaking in the corner of the screen and heard it creaking. I was just listening to their conversation in disbelief. Taking advantage of the fact that no one else was listening, the two were casually talking bad about me, my eldest son and second son. I'm not good with stiff ceremonies like that. My strict wife is always nagging, saying I have no manners. You really got scolded, didn't you? I felt sorry for you, father-in-law. Right? But thanks to the second son being gone, we got a chance to meet like this again. After such outrageous words from a parent, I heard that vulgar laughter. I felt a cold chill running down my spine. The usually calm eldest son next to me seemed to be shaking silently in anger. Can you believe that's what a father says? Maybe it's better to not think of him as a father anymore. Beyond anger and astonishment, there was just silence in my head. As I looked up, the relatives were chatting at the dining table. At that point, I could no longer think. I turned the volume of my mobile phone to the maximum and decided to attract the attention of the relatives. What's he doing? He left the funeral and is doing this with his son's wife? So the sickness was a lie. Did they want to be alone that badly? When I turned up the volume, the unusual conversation of the two made the chatter stop, and everyone's attention was focused on us. The somber atmosphere seemed to have dissipated as everyone glued their eyes on the tiny screen of my mobile phone, listening intently to the absurd conversation between the two. What if another unexpected accident happens? Then I could come visit father-in-law again. Maybe Lucas will be next. But before that, it will be my strict wife, right? She's getting on in years, so it should be soon. The relatives widened their eyes at the two, who were making light of the second son's misfortune and even joking about their next clandestine meeting. A hushed silence fell over everyone, and no one spoke until the two finished their conversation. After letting the relatives witness the whole discourse and actions of the two, I closed my mobile phone as we began discussing returning to the venue. It seemed as if everyone's hearts were united in anger at the two, who were trampling on our family. We'll need to have a proper talk when they get back. Indeed, I'm curious to hear their excuses. By this time, everyone present was on my side and the eldest son's side. We were all waiting, on tenterhooks, for the imminent return of the two, who would soon be under our concentrated attack alongside our seething relatives. It was about 15 minutes later when the two returned. That's roughly how long it takes to get from our house to the funeral parlor, so they must have been having that conversation in my room until just now. I looked at the two with a feeling of contempt. We're back. What's with all the long faces? Welcome back. Where have you been? We were worried because you took so long. Didn't we tell you earlier? We stepped out because Margareta wasn't feeling well. Oh, Margareta, are you feeling better now? Yes, I'm perfectly fine now. Sorry to have worried you. With a frivolous laugh, the eldest son's wife waved at me, and I prompted her to take a seat opposite me. Seeing her husband sit next to her as if it was the most natural thing in the world, I let out a sigh. As soon as they sat down, all the relatives turned to look at us. A little surprised and visibly uncomfortable, the two were bombarded with my questions one by one. What were you doing all this time? We were just around until she felt better. Around where? Around a family restaurant. I see. Then where's the receipt? Why the hell are you so suspicious? It was the husband who first raised his voice at my pointed questions. He frowned and glared at me as if there was no reason for him to be suspected. But after hearing their conversation just now, I had no more hesitation. Were you really at a family restaurant all this time? I've told you so. I threw away the receipt. Well then, what did you eat? What about you, Margareta? Mother-in-law, isn't this too much? What are you suggesting we did? I was left speechless and my face twisted at the words of my eldest son's wife, who covered her mouth and pretended to be on the verge of tears. Who's really the cruel one here? I wanted to shout at her and put a hand on her chest and think about it. In front of the watching relatives, I took a deep breath and prepared to deliver the final blow to the two who continued to play innocent. I pointed at her sleeve. Oh, Margareta, there's some cat hair on your sleeve. I wonder whose it is. This is, well, a stray cat, right? Yes, I must have gotten it on me when I petted a stray cat we saw earlier. That's not it. It must be from our cat. You got it on just now, didn't you? I whip out my phone, activating the pet camera app I'd installed earlier. It's a handy tool that also records. Right there and then, I replay the scene of my son's wife lifting our cat in front of everyone. I replay their terrible conversation we'd all been watching at maximum volume. Upon realizing the implications of everyone's frosty gazes, the pair visibly pales. You knew about this all along. Why, yes, I found it hilarious that you two thought you could play dumb forever. That's a violation of privacy. Quite ironic coming from someone who sneaks into others' rooms to enjoy time with another's husband. Finding out they had been caught, the two throw a tantrum like petulant children. I remained calm, tirelessly pointing out their faults. It was my son who reached his breaking point due to their blatant lack of remorse. He slams the table forcefully, starting to reprimand them in a low, stern voice. How dare you mess around during a family member's funeral? No, your mother-in-law trapped us. What's the difference? We heard everything you two were saying. Nods of agreement ripple through the crowd at my son's words. No one here was going to defend them for wishing ill upon my son and me, even as a joke, just so they could meet privately. When I pointed this out, the two looked angrily at my son upon realizing the agreement among everyone present. You set this up just to shame us. Absolutely not. It was pure coincidence. I was trying to check on Calico and you two just happened to be in frame. It's awful to air our dirty laundry like this. I never imagined anyone could stoop so low at such a gathering. And I'm the loyal wife here, am I not? While repeating my husband's words, I glance at him. With the tables turned, my husband said nothing more and didn't even defend my son's wife. She tried to plead her case and insult me to evade blame, but no one listened. That's enough. I can't bear to be a family with someone like you who can do such a thing. Are you saying you want a divorce? Of course. With that, my son calmly addressed his wife, who finally fell silent. She tried to scramble to her defense again, but he paid her no attention. As my husband, acting like an outsider, tried to comfort my son's wife, I cleared my throat. Do you think this has nothing to do with you? What? How could you do this on the day we were bidding farewell to our son? You shamelessly lied and didn't even apologize until now. I'm sorry. No need. I don't want an apology just from your lips. Let's divorce as well. My husband's face turned pale at my words. I wonder why he ever thought he would be unaffected. He had never taken care of his surroundings. Without someone to look after him, he'd struggle. I turned my back on my husband, who's lamely trying to apologize, and opened the room door. I don't want people who are about to become strangers staying here any longer. Please, leave. Give us back the car keys, a voice demanded. My eldest son's wife looked at her husband, a desperate plea in her eyes, but he could do nothing. Prodded by the relatives, they trudged out of the room. I'll introduce you to my company's lawyer. My son's a cop. Call us any time if something happens. What a shameless man showing up at his son's funeral like this. The relatives gave us words of comfort as if to protect us from the harsh reality. After the funeral, the couple were forced to sign divorce papers. My eldest son's ex-wife later ran to her own parents, begging for their help with the compensation negotiation for the divorce trial. She tried to play the victim as she did before, but her parents were understandably appalled. Now she's working day and night to pay the compensation awarded in the divorce trial. As for the ex-husband, it was discovered that he had drained his own savings, pouring everything into his former wife's wants. He was left penniless, and the family house was awarded to me as compensation. With the divorce settlement, the house became mine. Even so, there were too many painful memories associated with the house, especially my former bedroom, shared with the ex-husband and his former wife. So I decided to sell the house and move to a pet-friendly apartment. With the haughty ex-husband out of the way, I am now enjoying a tranquil life with my pet cat Calico. Being alone and free with my cat is far more comfortable than I expected. I didn't realize how stressed I was living with my ex-husband. After the divorce, my eldest son comes to visit me from time to time. He seems to be leading a calmer life and even told me that he's doing better than before. He recently shared some good news about a promotion at work. To celebrate, we decided to go out for a meal, and during that outing, we bumped into the ex-husband. He looked drastically different, more like a timid old man than the defiant person he used to be. There was no fire in his eyes, and it took us a while to recognize him. He approached us, a look of shock on his face. "Hey, there are different people living in our house. What's going on?" he demanded. "Our house? It's not yours anymore, at least," I responded. "Did you sell it? Why would you do that?" In a hoarse voice, the ex-husband raised his voice at me, the arrogance of old returning. Perhaps he had gone back to the old house, hoping to claim it back, or maybe he thought he could persuade me to forgive him. Either way, his attitude showed no signs of remorse. Seeing my son's disgusted look, I stepped in and said, "Why on earth would I want to sleep in the same room where you had been so cozy with your former wife? I have no need for such a house." At that, the ex-husband looked taken aback. He turned around and walked away. Had he forgotten what he had done in the past? It dampened our celebration, but we decided to enjoy the sunny afternoon. And so we resumed our walk under the beautiful afternoon sky.